The signs were ready and waiting by the front door. I'd taken the better part of the last couple of days on them because I wanted them to be perfect. Now the hard part. Up the stairs into the master bedroom, rip off the bedclothes, wrestle the mattress off the queen-size bed and half carry, half slide it down the stairs, down the hall, through the front door and out onto the front lawn next to the street. Back into the house, up the stairs, toss the slats and bed clothes down the stairs, follow them down and take them outside, tossing them into a pile beside the mattress. Another trip to the bedroom, kick apart the side rails and hustle them outside, check my watch, 4:22, have to hurry, need to be done by 5. The headboard and footboard followed, and by 4:35 the bed was back together. Next, the kitchen table. That was light enough that I was able to scoot and carry it, turning it sideways and angling it through the door, placing it next to the bed in the yard. The final item was the 6x8 throw rug in the living room. I rolled it up and placed it by the other items in the yard, erected the signs and noted with pride that it was only 4:55. 10 minutes to go till my wife comes home. I walked to the middle of the street and turned to view my handiwork. It looked so beautiful it almost brought a tear to my eye. My wife's and my marriage bed, the kitchen table and throw rug. The 3 places I knew for sure my wife and her lover had used repeatedly over the past 6 months. And the signs, so perfect, placed high enough to be out of reach, and one by one I read them. The large sign in front of the furniture: these items are yours for the taking, free, they are no longer wanted in this house. If you are able to stomach the stench of adultery and broken vows, help yourself. The sign above the bed read: on this bed my wife repeatedly broke her wedding vows and threw our marriage away by having sex with her lover twice a week for the past 6 months. This afternoon was their most recent tryst, and the smell of their bodies still clings to the sheets. Over the kitchen table was the sign that said: my wife and her lover often had sex on this table, usually just a few hours before she served me dinner. Over the throw rug was a sign that said: my wife and her lover seem to prefer this rug for their sex experiments, something my wife always denied me, claiming it was too nasty to even think about. To each sign I had stapled a 17 by 24-inch photo of the adulterous pair consummating their union on the appropriate piece of furniture. There was a 5th sign, fixed slightly behind the table, which read: my wife's lover is her boss, Greg Allen of Mitchell, Price and Allen Realty. He's married and has 3 children. I don't think his wife knows about any of this, but she soon will. 4:57, just in time, she would be home any minute. I turned and looked around me and found a group of neighbors already gathering to watch what I was doing. Several cars had stopped and more than one person was talking on a cell phone, either calling their friends to come take a look, or calling the police to have me arrested for fostering public indecency. I casually waved to the assembling group and walked into the house, closing the door after me. At precisely 5:05 p.m., I saw my wife's car turn the corner at the end of the block and immediately slow down, seeing all the people gathering near our house, looking at something on our lawn and talking and laughing among themselves. Slowly she drove to the house we'd shared for the past 10 years and stopped in front, staring at the sight of the furniture and the signs in our front yard, paying, I'm sure, special attention to the large photos of her and her boss, Greg Allen, having sex, their faces masks of lust and pleasure. Even through her car window and the window of my house, and with all the conversation of the 40 or 50 people standing around gawking, I still heard her scream, no, oh God, no. Finally, her eyes moved from the signs to the front window of the house where she saw me standing. We stared at each other. She looked grief-stricken, her face an ashy white. I could see tears falling down her cheeks. She seemed to be asking me why. I had the same question for her. I watched her for a few seconds, then turned away from her, closing the curtains behind me. I guess at this point I should explain how my wife Sherry and I arrived at this tragic place. My name is Jack Meyer. I met Sherry in college our junior year. A mutual friend suggested we get together, and when we met for the first time I was smitten. Sherry wasn't a beautiful woman in the classic sense, but she was so damn cute and sexy. 5'2", with beautiful blue eyes and dishwater blonde hair, down to her shoulders. Her body was petite but perfectly proportioned, and tiny waist captivated me, and though she didn't know it at the time, she had me, and the thought that I wouldn't win her never crossed my mind. Sherry and I started dating, and within a few weeks we were a couple. A month after we met, we made love for the first time, and it was like nothing I had ever experienced. I was obsessed with Sherry and couldn't get enough of her body. Neither of us were virgins our first time, but we were far from experienced and we luxuriated in each other's bodies. I think it is safe to say we were as deeply in love as it was possible for two people to be. We were married just after graduation and moved into our first home, a condo in Van Nuys. Sherry got her real estate license and went to work with one of the area's more prominent agencies. I used my engineering degree to snag a nice position with an electronic manufacturing company, and we settled into a life I thought was perfect. For the next 13 years we shared a fabulous life together, first in our condo, then as our earnings increased we bought our dream home and started our family. First came Shelby, now 8 years old, then 2 years later along came Ryan, who is now 6. Sherry and I loved those two kids to total distraction. We lived for each other and our family. So, what happened? I wish I could tell you. I wish I could say I picked up on the little signs that told me something was wrong, but I didn't. I was totally oblivious, living in a world of absolute love and trust with my wife. It took a fluke to fill me in on what was going on. A fluke caused by our daughter Shelby getting sick at school. It was a Thursday, and I got a call just before noon from the school nurse that Shelby had come down with what appeared to be the flu. At the time I was in the middle of a staff meeting, and asked the school nurse to please call my wife. The nurse told me she had tried calling Sherry at her office, where she was told my wife would be out for most of the rest of the day. She tried our house but there wasn't an answer, so she left a message, then her cell, only to be directed to her voicemail. So, she called me since it was important that my daughter be picked up as soon as possible. I made my apologies to my staff and drove as quickly as I could to Shelby's school, where I picked her up and headed for home. When we got there and I opened the garage door, I was surprised to see a car I didn't recognize parked in my car's spot next to my wife's. Instantly I got a lump in my throat and my stomach began to churn. No, it couldn't be, I told myself. My wife, the woman I loved more than life itself, couldn't be having an affair. It wasn't possible. But still, why was there a car in the garage with the door down? Something was very wrong and I had to find out, and I couldn't let my daughter find out with me. Stay in the car for a minute, Shelby, I told her. But why? I want to go to bed, she whined. I know it, baby, but I think the exterminator is here spraying the house for bugs and the spray will make you even sicker, I lied to her. The first lie I'd ever told my daughter. Let me check first and then I'll come and get you. Shelby whined some more but laid back down in the back seat to wait for me. As quietly as I could I walked into the garage, used my key to open the door to the kitchen, hoping desperately to find my wife and one of her girlfriends having coffee and chatting at the kitchen table, but when I turned the corner the kitchen was empty. I stepped through the kitchen and turned towards the living room, hoping to find her sitting on the sofa holding a conversation, but no one was there either. Then I heard her laughing, the joyous girly laugh I knew so well. It was coming from upstairs and my heart sank. The only rooms up there were bedrooms. My knees got weak and I felt like I was going to throw up, but I pushed myself forward. As bad as I feared things were, I had to find out. I walked quietly up the stairs, the carpeting softening the sound of my feet. The first bedroom was my daughter's. The door was open, and as I peeked and I found the room empty, the bed was still made. The second door led to my son's room and the door was closed. I started to open it and then heard my wife's laughter again coming from farther down the hall, the master suite. My heart in my throat, I crept to the edge of the door and listened. At first I heard nothing, then came the sound of the bed rocking gently against the wall, then my wife's voice. Oh God, Greg, so good, oh yes, do me baby, be my man. Then a male voice, that feels good, doesn't it, Sherry? Yes, Greg, you know it's good, the best ever, I've told you that 1,000 times, no one has ever done me like you do, not even your chicken husband Jack, he panted as he continued to have sex with my wife. Please don't call Jack a chicken, Greg, he's not, he just can't make me feel like you do. He loves me so much and he tries so hard, but every time he makes love to me, all I can think about is having sex with you, completing me like no one else can. My body had turned to ice, my loving wife couldn't stand the way I made love to her. I felt bile rising into my throat, but I fought it down. I had to see for myself, but at the same time I didn't want to let them see me. I realized at that very second that my marriage was over, but still I needed visual proof of her affair. With my heart totally shattered, I slowly turned the handle on the door and opened it just an inch, just so I could peek through, and what I saw killed every ounce of love I'd ever had for my loving wife. She was on the bed with being screwed by a man I recognized as her boss, Greg Allen. My first inclination was to rush in and beat the shit out of him, but quickly decided that I'd only end up in jail. After all, he wasn't forcing my wife, she was willingly and enthusiastically giving herself to him, and as he pounded her, I turned away, quietly closed the door and fumbled my way down the stairs, gagging on the bile in my throat, determined to keep it down. Somehow, I made it back to my car, put down the garage door and started the engine, backing out of the driveway. Daddy, where are we going? I'm sick, I want to go to bed. I know it shall be, but I was right. The stuff going on inside the house would make you even sicker than you are. I was only inside for a few minutes and it made me sick. I told her, not exactly telling her the truth but not lying either. I'll take you to Grandma Sharon's house for a few hours till the stink goes away. It was a 15-minute drive to my mom's place, and while I drove, my mind went completely crazy. My marriage was over, done, without any hope of being saved. No way would I ever stay with the 304 I saw a few minutes ago, and she and her lover were doing it in my bed. My bed. That 304. That street-grade hooker. I pounded on the steering wheel and tears started rolling down my cheeks. Daddy, what's wrong? Nothing, Shelby, I'm fine. Just the stink in the house really bothered me, got to me. I'm fine, don't worry. I'm fine. I left Shelby with her grandmother, telling her I'd pick her up in a couple of hours. I didn't explain anything to my mom about what I had witnessed, just told her to watch Shelby till I got back from work. I was tempted to drive back to my house and confront the cheating pair, but decided I needed more than just a confrontation. I needed revenge, and as I drove back to my office I began to form the plans that would ruin my wife and her boss forever. The electronics firm I worked for had several divisions. I was a senior engineer in the medical equipment division, and we shared a large complex with another division that designed and built commercial security equipment. When I reached my office, I told my secretary to make sure I wasn't disturbed the rest of the afternoon, then picked up the phone and called my counterpart in the security division. Dan Taylor was an outstanding engineer and had been a good friend ever since college. I told him I needed to see him right away, and he said he was coming my way anyway to drop off some blueprints to be copied, and he'd see me in half an hour. I told my secretary that Dan could come into my office as soon as he arrived, and true to his word, he knocked on my door 20 minutes after our phone conversation. What's cooking, Jack? Come in, Dan, and close the door. I told him. Whoa, you look like you just lost your last friend, he told me. I think I have, and I need your help. Anything, Jack? What's going on? I just caught my wife and her boss having sex at my house in my bed. Damn, Jack, you're kidding. I wish I were. I had to pick up my daughter at school, and when I got home there was a strange car in my garage. I snuck in and found them in our bedroom on our bed. I couldn't believe it, but it's true. Shit, Jack, that shouldn't happen to anyone. What happened when you confronted them? I didn't confront them. I wanted to, but my daughter is sick and I couldn't take a chance that she might see them, so I made her wait in the car for me. After I saw them together, I left quietly and took Shelby to my mom's house. What are you going to do? I'm not really sure, but I do know I need proof. I need audio and video of them the next time they do it, and that's where you come in. You need security cameras and mics? Something small. I can hide in several rooms in the house that will record everything that goes on. I think I can help you with that, Jack, but how do you know there will be a next time? Maybe this was a one-time thing where things got out of control. No chance, Dan. They talked about the fact they've been doing it regularly for the last 6 months. I don't know if they always go to my house, but I'm willing to bet they do. Hotels leave paper trails that neither of them can afford, and her boss's wife stays at home, so that leaves only my house available when I'm at work and the kids are in school. We talked a few more minutes, then we got down to business. Dan said he had access to a new beta line of wireless miniature cameras and microphones that would work with my laptop or home computer. He also had a small voice-operated recorder that I could put under Sherry's car seat to capture any conversations she might have while she was driving. It would only capture her side of the conversation, but it was better than nothing. I thanked him and told him I'd pick up everything in his office the next day. Going home that night was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I had no idea if I could face my wife and act like nothing had happened. I figured the best thing I could do is make Sherry think I wasn't feeling well, which was the truth. I picked up Shelby from my mom's, and when I got home Sherry was fixing dinner in the kitchen. When she saw I had Shelby with me she became frantic. "Where have you been? And why didn't you call and tell me that Shelby was sick?" "I just got the school nurse's message on the answering machine. The school tried to call you, Sherry, but for some reason you weren't available. They called your office and were told you weren't there. Then they tried the home phone and left the message. They even called your cell, but it went to a voicemail. Oh God, I must have accidentally turned it off when I was showing houses. I didn't have a minute to myself all day." "Yeah, I'm sure of that," I thought. "Too busy having sex with your boss to be bothered with your daughter." Sherry hugged Shelby and told her how sorry she was, then helped her to her bed. My wife may be a total 304, but she does love her kids. I was the one that appeared to be the impediment to her happiness. Well, that was going to change very soon. Sherry got our daughter to bed and came back to the kitchen to fix soup for her and finish making dinner for the rest of us. "I'm not feeling well either," I told her. "I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, just in case I'm contagious." Sherry felt my forehead. "You do feel a little clammy, honey, and you look pale." "Yeah," I thought, pale and clammy. That's what happens when you catch your wife having sex with another man in your bed. I didn't answer her, just turned and climbed the stairs. I went first to the master suite. I hated to go in there, but I needed my shaving gear, toothbrush and clothes for work the next day, so I forced myself to enter the room. A window was open, and the smell of sex was gone and the bed was made. She must have changed the sheets. It killed me to look at it. All I saw in my mind was her boss having sex with her, while she told him how good it was and that she belonged to him and him alone forever. Anger rose inside of me like a wave, but I forced it down. I had to remain calm until I could bring the fires of hell down on both their heads, and I would. That was a guarantee I would. I gathered the items I needed and went to the guest bedroom, closing the door behind me. I stripped down to my skivvies and climbed into bed. My body felt wooden. I wanted to cry, but I forced it down. I had a mission to complete and I couldn't allow emotions to get in the way. For hours I lay there in the dark with sleep eluding me. My wife came into the room after she'd fed the kids and put them to bed. I feigned sleep. She touched my forehead with the palm of her hand, and then left the room, closing the door behind her. Sherry always took the kids to school, so I got up early, showered and left the house before she got up. I'm sure that seemed strange to her, but I would just tell her that I needed to make up for the lost hours yesterday when I was feeling ill. Frankly, I didn't care what she thought at this point. I just wanted out. Out of what I thought until yesterday was a beautiful marriage built on lifelong loyalty, honesty, and commitment. How tragically wrong I was. I got to work before any of the office staff arrived, made a pot of coffee and started laying out my plans. I knew I would need to cancel our joint credit cards, transfer half our joint checking and savings accounts into another bank under my name only. I would change my will, life insurance and 401k beneficiaries, removing Sherry and naming only Shelby and Ryan. It seemed so little to have to do to dissolve the last 13 years of my life. It should be harder, and deep inside I figured at some point it would be. I also knew I needed to find a good divorce attorney to try to keep Sherry from raking me over the coals. This was a no-fault divorce state, so adultery wouldn't play into the financial settlement. It might, however, help me get to keep my kids. Sherry had proven how unimportant I am in her life, but she was a good mom and I didn't want to keep her away from her children. I just wanted joint custody so I would remain an important part of their lives too. I tried with all my might to not think about our love life, and how humiliating it was to hear my wife tell her lover how superior he was to me in every way. I knew if I allowed myself to dwell on that right now I would start to doubt myself, and I couldn't do that just yet. That, I knew, would come later, and when it finally hit me it would likely destroy me. With my list finished I called Dan's office. He was there and told me he'd have everything I needed by noon. He'd even come with me to help me install everything and make sure I knew how to use it. I tried to concentrate on getting some paperwork off my desk when my cell phone rang. I could see it was Sherry, so after 3 rings I answered it. Her voice never failed to make me feel warm, but this time the warmth was just a precursor to burning anger. "Hi baby. How are you feeling?" she asked in her most loving voice, still a little sick to my stomach. I told her. If she only knew how sick. "I'm worried about you, honey. You left this morning before I could check on you." "Yeah, I have a lot of things I need to take care of and not a lot of time. So I came in early." "Please Jack, take care of yourself. I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you. You and Shelby and Ryan are my whole life." "You have a very strange way of showing that." I thought to myself, but what I told her was, yeah, I'll be fine. Just need to get it out of my system. "Well, if you're up to it tonight, I can think of a good way to make everything better for you." The 304. I thought, and to think I've been so stupidly blind that I used to swallow her bullshit hook, line and sinker, but not anymore. She was about to get everything that was coming to her. Just bide my time. Sure, we'll see how I feel. Boy, you really must not feel well to be so disinterested in getting what you know belongs to you, baby. Not disinterested, Sherry, just a lot on my mind right now. See you tonight. I'll be home by 6, honey. If you need me for anything, just give me a call. I'm in the office all day today. That's what I needed to hear. I called Dan. He said he had everything ready, and I should meet him at the door to the loading dock. We put everything into Dan's van, and with the two of us working on the install, had it all in place and tested by 3.30. Dan installed the software on my home office PC, and set up a secure folder to gather and hold everything the cameras and microphones picked up. We bugged the living room, kitchen, guest bedroom, and of course the master suite, paying special attention to that room with 4 cameras that would capture virtually everything that went on there. As a final thought, we also installed a camera and mic in the master bath in case the loving couple decided to shower together after their sex. Everything was automatically activated by motion with the cameras turning on the mics. I was ready. That night was the toughest one of my life. I couldn't convince myself to play the illness routine again, so after dinner, when the kids were asleep, I dutifully followed my wife to our room, where I turned on my side away from her, and pretended to go to sleep. Sherry seemed perturbed since we always cuddled before sleep. She spooned up against my back, draping her arm over me. "Anything wrong with my love?" she asked. "No, Sherry," I told her, "you have always satisfied me. I just wonder sometimes if I'm man enough for you." "Jack, why would you say such a thing? You know you have always been enough man for me. My life would end if something happened to you. I'll never need anyone else as long as I have you. You are my perfect lover, man, always have been, always will be." "Yeah, I guess that's just hard to believe sometimes." "Jack, what is wrong with you?" "Nothing, Sherry, just tired," and closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Sometime later I heard the sound of softly crying. I felt no pity for her, but I did wonder if she cried out of shame for what she was doing or because she felt like I was being mean to her. Again, I got up before she did, and took the opportunity to install the voice recorder under the seat of her car. I also checked out the video and sound from the installed equipment, and was assured that everything we'd done the night before was captured cleanly, even in the low-light nighttime conditions in our bedroom. When Sherry got up at first, she was a little snippy, telling me I'd said some things the night before that had hurt her feelings. Then she gave me a peck on the cheek, and her mood changed into a cheery one. I guess that's because of her plans for that afternoon with her boss. I poured her a cup of coffee and told her I would be locked in my office all day. She told me she had to spend the entire afternoon showing several homes, and was pretty sure she was going to make a big sale, but would be able to pick up Shelby and Ryan after school. With a peck on her cheek, I made my way to the garage door, only to have Sherry say, "Jack, you forgot to tell me you love me, honey. You know how important it is to me to hear you tell me that every morning before we start our days." "Sorry, Sherry, I guess by now I figured you should know how I feel about you. There's just a lot on my mind." "Okay, I forgive you this time, but a girl needs to hear her man tell her that he loves her. Don't forget that." "I promise I won't." And I walked out. Yeah, I'll tell some girl how much I love her, if and when I ever find another girl I can trust enough to fall in love with. The information Sherry gave me about showing homes all afternoon led me to believe that she would likely be spending some time with the true love of her life. I hope that was the case. I was tired of playing games. I wanted this whole disaster over and done with. I spent the morning actually getting some work done in my office, though I kept glancing at my watch. Finally at noon I told my secretary that I would be gone for a few hours and set my plan in motion. I checked out a company van and parked across the street from my house where I waited to see what transpired. It took till almost 1 o'clock before I saw Sherry's car pull up to the house, open the garage door and park in her usual spot. When she got out of her car and entered the house without lowering the garage door, I figured she was either going to leave again right away or she was expecting someone. 10 minutes later I found she was expecting someone, as the same car I'd seen the day I caught them together drove up our driveway and into the garage, taking my place just as he had taken my place in my wife's life. I saw him get out of the car and the garage door closed. I had to hand it to them, they had guts to be so blatant about meeting in my house, in my bed, to carry out their affair. It just proved to me that they both believed there was no way they would ever be caught. Either that, or they had both come to the conclusion that they didn't care whether they got caught or not. Well, they would soon find out how wrong they were on both counts. They had been caught, and I would make sure that they would both care a great deal. With this final proof of my wife's infidelity, and knowing I would soon have all the visual proof I needed of their sordid affair, I finally allowed the tears to fall. For 13 years I had been convinced that my loving wife would never cheat on me, just as I would never cheat on her. And with the tears came the first round of doubts. Was he that much better as a lover? I saw that he wasn't any bigger than I was. Maybe he was better looking, though neither of us would win any stud awards. Why would she willingly take the chance on destroying our marriage, and his marriage too, since she had to realize there was no way I would not tell his wife exactly what the two of them were doing? I so desperately wanted to walk into the house and confront them. But why? What would that accomplish? I'd catch them in the act, but hell, I'd already done that once, though they weren't aware of it. Would I feel better by beating the shit out of her lover? Yes, but I'd likely go to jail because of it, and frankly by this time neither one of them were worth it. My only worry was how all of this horror would affect my kids, and his kids too, since I was prepared to destroy him just like he had destroyed me. By 2:30 they must have finished, because the garage door opened and her lover backed his car out and left. 15 minutes later my wife did the same thing, closing the garage door behind her. I knew she would return home with the kids by 3:30, so I hurriedly parked in the garage and made my way to my home office. I didn't want to take the time to review all the footage the cameras had recorded, just wanted to make sure the evidence I needed was safely on my hard drive. After 10 minutes I'd seen enough. It wasn't a total repeat of the last time they were together, but it was graphic as hell. They'd started out having sex on the kitchen table where I ate my meals. They laughed about how many times they'd, wondering if I'd ever figured out that I was eating on the same exact spot where he had sex with her so many times. After that they moved to our bedroom, but not before her a-hole lover suggested doing it in my daughter's room, just for a change of scenery. My wife had a fit about that, telling him, absolutely not. It was bad enough that she let him rub her husband's face in it, but her kids' rooms would always be out of bounds. At least she seemed to have a few principles, just not where I was concerned. In the bedroom they started again. I noticed neither of them ever said they loved each other, but my wife did continue to tell her boss he was by far the best lover she's ever had. As a final act, though I couldn't immediately understand why, they moved to the throw rug by the fireplace in the living room where he did her again. Once they were done, I found it odd that she didn't take the time to change the sheets, but figured she would do that when she brought the kids home at 3:30. That left her plenty of time to air the room out and clean the evidence, since I seldom got home before 6. Knowing the evidence I needed was secure inside my hard drive, I shut the system down and left the house without even bothering to check out the mess I assumed was still present on my marriage bed. I'd seen enough, and even though my heart was hardened against my wife, I still felt sick inside. A sickness that was soon replaced by a burning anger and hatred. I think I actually smiled, knowing the hell I was about to bring down on both of their cheating heads. I returned to work and filled Dan in on everything I'd seen and heard. Like me, he still couldn't understand how a wife as supposedly loving as Sherry could do what it was now perfectly clear she was doing. Not only had she shattered our sacred vows to each other, but she'd gone out of her way to heap as much humiliation as possible on me to her lover, always letting him know he was a better lover, more of a man, the only person who could complete her. All those thoughts sank my soul into a deep abyss of pain and despair I knew I had to climb out of so I could finish my task of destroying both of them. I needed to find a good divorce lawyer, and Dan suggested I contact the law firm the company used to see if they could suggest anyone. I talked to one of the corporate lawyers I knew in the firm, and he gave me 3 names of divorce lawyers he knew had successful records in protecting husbands' rights. The first one I called was getting ready to retire and wasn't taking new clients, but the second one said he'd make time for me the next afternoon at 3. That taking care of, I resolved to take care of canceling credit cards, changing beneficiaries, and moving money around the next morning. When I got home that night, Sherry was in the kitchen fixing dinner while the kids did their homework in their rooms. She was wearing a yellow sundress and she looked beautiful, and for a minute I thought my heart would break all over again. She was smiling and seemed so happy. I figured it was her usual post-afternoon delight in a good mood. "Hey baby, how's my man? I hope you had as good a day as I did," she told me, actually causing my eyebrows to rise in surprise. My day was interesting. Not that good really, but I did discover several interesting things I wasn't aware of. "Why was yours so great?" I asked, knowing full well exactly why she was in such a good mood. "I'm sure having sex with the world's greatest lover will make your day." "I made a sale," she said. "First one this week, but I think there might be another one on Thursday when I show some more homes." "I guess this must have been your lucky day," I told her with less than great enthusiasm. "Anything else special about today? Meet any interesting or special people?" I asked. She gave me a strange look. "No honey, just the usual. Work to get through my day so I can come home and be with my family. You know that's where my heart is." I nodded my head. "I also know where your loyalties are, or at least where they were," I thought as I headed up to our bedroom to change clothes. While I changed, I noticed that the sheets had been changed and the room aired out. There was still water on the shower floor, and I mentioned that to her when I returned to the kitchen. "Did you shower sometime this afternoon?" She physically jumped at my words and turned to me, a guilty look on her face. "No, of course not, silly. Why would I do that?" "I don't know, but there's water on the shower floor and it never stays there more than a few hours." "Oh, the drain is probably clogging up again," she said. "Yeah, maybe, but I just cleaned it out a couple of weeks ago." Maybe someone is sneaking into the house to have a tryst with their lover, and they shower after they've had a really good session of sex, I said. This time she froze in place for several seconds. She didn't turn to face me, just kept facing the counter with her head down, then continued to pull lettuce apart for a salad. "My Jack, you certainly have a vivid imagination coming up with something like that." "Yeah, that's me," I said. "Mr. Imagination, or is it ESP? Sometimes I think I can read people's minds." "Well, if you could read my mind, you'd see how much I love you," and she attempted to laugh, but it sounded strained. "I'll be in my office. Let me know when dinner is ready."